And the next move means building a lie big enough to hide the truth while you try to pull a nuclear submarine out of black water. Building a lie big enough to hide the truth. Okay, so here's the thing. You can't park a ship the length of a city block over a Soviet grave and call it science unless the story is airtight. Most people think you slap a logo on steel and stamp it classified. Not here. They needed an industry. So they built one, on paper first, then in steel. Deep-sea manganese nodules, potato-sized rocks scattered across abyssal plains, rich in nickel, cobalt, copper, and dreams. The 197s were hungry for new resources, so the story didn't just sound plausible, it sounded profitable. Howard Hughes was the perfect misdirection. Reclusive, unaccountable, and rich enough to make absurd projects look like Tuesday. If Hughes wanted a ship that could mine nodules, nobody asked why the derrick needed a 600-ton gimbal or why the hull had a roof that opened like a hangar. The eccentric billionaire narrative did the heavy lifting. Howard's chasing minerals, covers for Langley's stealing a submarine, because the first line requires almost no follow-up. Reporters love spectacle. They hate math on ocean engineering. But here's where it gets interesting. The CIA didn't just draft a press release. They engineered plausible deniability into contracts. Shell companies bloomed. Summer Corporation at the top, Global Marine as the muscle, and a lattice of limited partnerships with names designed to evaporate on contact. In procurement files, a phrase becomes doctrine. We can neither confirm nor deny. Not a slogan yet, an operating principle. Vendors got slivers. Welders thought they were building a riser. Accountants saw oceanographic research. Only a narrow ring knew the capture vehicle wasn't scooping nodules. It was a steel hand built to cradle a coffin. Money trails told their own story. Capital flowed through cutouts so the line from a black budget to a Pennsylvania yard didn't glow for a curious staffer. Invoices described subsea handling assemblies, not claws. Insurance riders talked about cargo of unusual geometry, not a Soviet hull with nuclear torpedoes. Every document carried two loads, the physical one and the narrative one. If a subpoena ever landed, the paper would read boring. Boring is armor. Now you might be thinking, why not use a Navy ship and classification stamps? Because a warship invites a warship. A commercial platform invites boredom. The genius wasn't just the front, it was operational camouflage. A ship that looks like it's mining can loiter, lower pipe, and make noise that matches the fiction. Tugboats, supply barges, helicopter runs, all banal in the language of industry. In the language of the Cold War, that's invisibility. The lie needed hardware, so the hardware served the lie. The Moon Pool, a gaping hole midship, was sold as a sheltered transfer bay for nodules. In reality, it was a private ocean where a submarine section could be hidden from satellites and Soviet trawlers. The massive derrick, a drill tower. The heave compensation system, a station-keeping necessity. Paper renamed every secret into an engineering requirement for a fake business. Even the giant weather doors were explained as safety shields, not curtains for espionage. And the sales job didn't stop at the pier. Trade journals got seeded with stories about seabed riches. Conferences in 1971 and 1972 featured speakers hyping nodules as the next oil. A smaller vessel, doing survey, made real passes in the North Pacific, conveniently near the coordinates you remember, collecting sediment samples and leaving a breadcrumb trail of credibility. The cover didn't just protect Azorian, it birthed sincere interest in deep-sea mining across the 197s. That's how good the fiction was. It created believers, some of whom built careers on it. But the lie had to survive contact with the Soviets. Intelligence knew a fisheries research trawler could show up and start counting oddities. So the plan built noise into the schedule. Equipment breakdowns, weather delays, maintenance holds that explained why a ship sat still for days with cranes twitching. Operational noise became a shield. If Moscow sent a cable asking, "What are they doing?" the answer looked consistent with the brochure. Inside, the need-to-know walls were brutal. Two teams shared decks. The cover team spoke nodules and productivity. The cleared team spoke loads, capture fingers, and lift dynamics. You could stand in a corridor and hear two realities in parallel. This only works if everyone believes their slice is the whole pie. Doubt is a leak. Conviction is a seal. There's a micro-story from a contracting office that nails the logic. A lawyer balks at indemnifying a component described so vaguely it could be anything. A project manager says, "It's a basket, it moves rocks." The lawyer signs because baskets are boring. That's the power of context. Shape it, and risk looks routine. Now, this is important because the cover shaped the machine. Tolerances, weights, and timelines had to map to something a mining vessel could plausibly do. If the claw looked like science fiction, the lie collapses. If it looked like a big gripper for geology, the lie breathes. Even noise profiles were tuned, deck routines that read like drilling, not theft. Every alarm, every crane move, every forklift beep supported the story. The choreography trained binoculars to see industry, not intrigue. Everything changes when the ship must sail. A lie on paper is theory. A lie at sea faces binoculars. So the final test wasn't legal or financial. It was behavioral. Could an $800 million ghost act boring under surveillance? If yes, the path to the wreck stays open. If no, you get a radio hail that starts with "Identify your operations" and ends with "History books." The story sold. Now the machine had to work, or everything would snap. Operational camouflage extended to language. Radio calls stayed dry. Humps down, string stable, riser hold. Deck signage wore neutral verbs. Logs tracked throughput, not targets. Even catering schedules were tuned to simulate normal port rhythms for resupply flights. A suspicious mind could still draw lines, but each line ended in a plausible now. That's how you hide a move in daylight. The final layer was contingency. If a Soviet boarding team arrived, the captain could offer a tour of the wrong decks, show a lab with nodule bins, and never open the doors that mattered. Behind those doors, a purge plan lived. Wipe records, flood the well, kill the evidence. No drama, just levers with names no one would say aloud. You don't plan for panic, you plan for muscle memory. So they built an industry to carry a lie that could carry a ship, that could carry a machine that might carry a submarine. That stack only works if every story holds under pressure. If any layer breaks, contract, behavior, language, the rest get exposed. The lesson is simple and cold. In the deep, engineering buys you inches. Cover buys you time. And you need both before you touch black water. Engineering the impossible claw, Clementine. Here's where the math stops being abstract. 16,500 feet isn't a depth, it's a regime. Pressure near 7,300 psi wants to crush voids, thicken oils, and slow valves. Light is useless. Cameras turn to snow. Most people think you send a sub with big lamps. You don't. At that depth, vision lies. Touch tells the truth. So the brief sounds simple and reads insane. Build a capture vehicle that can find, grip, and lift a shattered submarine section, blind while looking like mining. They give it a soft name, Clementine. On drawings, it's a frame with 6 articulated fingers. In steel, it's a cathedral of trusses, hinge knuckles, and hydraulic muscle, scaled to straddle a broken cylinder and hug internal frames, not fragile plating. Each finger needs 2 virtues that rarely coexist: strength to hold and compliance to not shred embrittled steel. Now, this is important because the wreck isn't uniform anymore. Years at depth, cold-soaked welds and seeded microcracks. The implosion in 1968 and the seabed impact pre-stressed everything. Grip the wrong rib and you rip history. That's why the shoes are wide, slightly soft with elastomer layers, and shaped to search for bone, frame edges and ring stiffeners, by load signature, not by sight. Load cells and contact switches along each finger tell operators when they've found structure. If the graph holds during a microlift, you're on bone. If it slides, you're on paint. You don't hang Clementine on a single cable. You build a riser string, all-field style, miles long, 60-foot pipe joint stacked into a steel spine. Every thread is a potential future headline. The ocean treats that spine like a tuning fork. Engineers model resonance, then detune it with mass collars, fairings, and diameter steps so vortex shedding never locks onto a clean note. If the sea finds rhythm, it will sing your lift apart. Everything changes when you add the ship's motion. The surface rides a swell, the bottom doesn't. If the deck moves feet and the frame moves inches, Brittle metal pays for your slop. Enter heave compensation, accumulators the size of rooms, cylinders, servo valves, and control logic, senses deck heave and pushes equal and opposite in real time. It's not magic, it's a governor on violence. It holds vertical load inside a band tight enough that the wreck feels a steady hand instead of a yank. Positioning is geometry under pressure. They lay a long baseline array of acoustic beacons around the site. Clementine carries transponders. The ship solves ranges into position and holds station with thrusters while the derrick meters feed. A quarter-degree error up top becomes feet down there. Feet break things, inches buy time. So the control room lives by numbers, lateral offsets, your drift, vertical rate, rendered big and simple. Let me show you the first contact. There's no window, there's a hum. The riser's strain climbs a hair and doesn't drain like mud. The operator eases right, lifts a whisper, watches the plateau. That feels like steel. Outer fingers close first, wide and patient to spread load. Pause, let the hull settle into clamp. Trim millimeters. Inner fingers hunt for internal frames until each finger's load cell sings the same song. Then a tiny test lift, mere inches. If the load holds shape, you've got structure. If it slips, you breathe, back off, reposition, and try again. Micro story from shore trials. They built a mock cylinder, clamped wrong on purpose, and listened to failure. The sound was a dull pop, not a scream. The needles told the story first. That ritual, trust the gauges, not your gut, became religion. Now you might be thinking, why not just overbuild and crush certainty into place? Because the wreck will fail before your frame does. Cold embrittlement lives at weld toes and bolt holes. A brute clamp writes a headline you can't retract. So they design sacrificial links, cheap metal that fails loud and early before the main frame does. They put hinge pins in all filled pockets so friction stays predictable in the cold. They tune elastomer hardness so it spreads pressure without creeping under load. They build compliance into strength. Control is where good intentions die. Miles of pipe add delay. The heave comp can lead the vertical wave, but a perfect vertical correction can feed lateral and torsional energy if phase drifts. So the frame carries torsion sensors and lateral accelerometers. If a slow twist wakes up, operators change thruster posture to tilt the string a degree, run a microlower to bleed stored energy, or shift control phase to shove the system out of the bad band. Modal monitoring isn't a sidebar, it's the main plot. Here's the part most people miss. The machine has to act like a miner to keep the lie alive. Cable trays wear survey labels. Winches are riser support. The moon pool doors are weather shields. Deck choreography looks like pipe handling. Noise sounds like drilling. If a Soviet trawler points a long lens, they see industry, not a theft. Risk never leaves. A misstalked joint 10,000 feet down is a patient saboteur. A forgotten damper lets a whisper of oscillation fatten into a sawtooth hours later. A thermocline thickens drag and nudges phase off by degrees that matter. So they write rituals, torque logs at every joint, ultrasonic checks on suspect threads, acoustic health monitoring, listening for the ping of a crack starting. Hear a ping, pause, bleed, reset. Rehearsal turns courage into calm. In a quiet patch, they lower onto planted targets, relearn how hydraulics that behave on deck turn molasses in cold, and recalibrate sensors that drift. The lesson is humbling and constant. Perfect doesn't exist. Good enough to climb is the only green light you'll ever get. Clementine leaves the yard elegant and temperamental, a machine built to do what physics barely allows. Once. Everyone on board knows the ocean will try to teach it a new note. The job is simple and brutal. Make sure that note doesn't become the one you hear when metal lets go. The Glomar Explorer sets the stage. Everything we've built so far, the lie and the machine, needs a stage that looks boring from a mile away and impossible from 5 feet. The Hughes Glomar Explorer is that paradox. From the dock, it reads like a supersized drill ship, towering derrick, cranes, helideck, and a boxy superstructure stretched across a football field of steel. But the magic sits in the middle, a moon pool the size of a basketball court, sealed by segmented, weather doors that can swallow a secret hole. You don't lift a submarine onto an open deck. You bring the ocean inside and close the roof. Now, this is important because the center well changes exposure. Satellites can't see into a box. Soviet trawlers can't film through steel. Deck choreography looks like routine riser handling, pipe sections moving from racks to the derrick, then disappearing into the ship's throat. Inside that throat is the garage, a hidden bay where Clementine can mate, where a covered structure can rise into dry air without a single watcher getting a line of sight. Outside, it's a mining show. Inside, it's a black-budget theater. Crew dynamics make the illusion work. Two realities share one hull. The cover team wears logos, fills out all productivity logs, and talks in the grammar of exploration. The cleared team speaks numbers that matter: load, torque, drift. Walk past a bulkhead, and the conversation flips from investors to impact coefficients. A quiet rule governs everything. If you're on the wrong side of the door, you don't ask. That's not just security, it's cognitive insulation. People perform better when their story is consistent. But here's where it gets interesting. The ship doesn't sail into empty ocean. It's shadowed. Soviet auxiliaries, fishing trawlers with too many antennas, linger at visual range. They count patterns, pipe trips, station-keeping cycles, helicopter runs. If the profile matches drilling, suspicion stays manageable. If anything looks off, questions get louder. So Glomar runs a script: regular pipe trips, periodic maintenance, holds, and noisy but explainable clanks from the derrick. Maritime boredom as armor. Operational camouflage isn't just behavior, it's media noise. Trade journals gush about nodules. Lobbyists brief staffers on industrial frontiers. The goal isn't headlines, it's plausibility. When a trawler radios American mining ship stationery in sector, a desk officer can pull a clipping that says, "Yes, Hughes is mining nodules." The cover breathes because paper exists to back it. Inside the ship, you feel the duality. One deck over, a crewman inventories, or samples that don't exist. Down in the moon pool control room, operators babysit heave compensation and stare at displays that turn ocean motion into math. The well goes cathedral quiet when it has to. Once the doors slide shut, the ship becomes a private planet. In that sealed volume, lasers can measure, cutters can spark, and cameras can record without a photon leaking outside. Security wraps around the hull in subtle ways. Tugs keep distance. A supply barge sits athwart, blocking long lens angles. Radar paints nearby vessels early. Radio protocols use euphemisms: pumps down, string stable, phrases that mean everything to the cleared ear and nothing to anyone else. A contingency plan lives where no one wants to look. If boarding is attempted, initiate emergency destruction and flood the well. You don't pray that page stays shut. You train so it never gets pulled. Now you might be thinking, what if the Soviets probe? They don't need to fire. They can drift close, call on a loud hailer, and ask to inspect for safety. That's where the cover earns its keep. A commercial ship can claim proprietary tech, hazardous operations, and procedures that can't pause. The captain can offer a tour of the wrong deck, show a lab with bins and charts, and never open the doors that matter. A warship argues. A miner deflects. There's a micro-story that nails the edge. A trawler lingers close. On deck, the cover team accidentally spills dummy processing crates. Forklifts scramble. Radios chirp. It looks like industrial clumsiness. The trawler logs a minor deck incident. Below, the cleared team barely glances up from a load plot. Everything changes when the descent begins. Pipe goes over the rotary, joint by joint, threaded and taut to ritual. Each 60-foot segment drops into the moon pool, vanishes into dark, and adds weight, risk, and commitment towards 16,500 feet. The positioning array wakes up. Thrusters tighten stance. If the sensors misread, Clementine will close on silt. If the readings hold, a vibration up the pipe soon says steel. On every deck, two sentences collide. Act like miners, think like thieves. One last detail anchors the fiction in steel. The derrick rides a 600-ton gimbal that keeps the rotary level as the ship moves, a true drilling necessity that also makes the silhouette convincing. Real engineering doing double duty as camouflage. That's the theme. Every visible choice serves a hidden purpose. When you get that right, you don't need a better lie. You need steadier hands. And here's the open loop you can't shake. Once the doors shut and the ocean disappears, The ship holds a secret no camera can catch. If anything goes wrong down there, the only witnesses are needles, numbers, and the people who have to live with them.